beauty, our genius, our work, our triumph, our glory. Won't worry what happened before me. I'm here.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to AC23, the podcast and radio show of the Arts Council of Greater Baton Rouge. My name is Chancellor Xero Skidmore. My producer is Jeremy Porcine. Thank you all for listening to us on the airwaves and the internet waves. Remember that you can always stream previous episodes via Apple Podcasts. You can subscribe to the show so that you get an alert whenever a new episode comes up. You can also rate the show as a means of letting others know how awesome it is and maybe how much more awesome we need to make it. Because of this super lame virus, we are still not yet back to recording in the iHeartMedia studios. So pardon the quality of the audio. And in that same breath, thank heavens for Zoom and all the other teleconferencing platforms out there helping us to see each other's faces. Speaking of seeing faces, you can still see all the faces of the Ebb and Flow Festival 2020. Go to ebbandflowbr.org and check out the calendar of events. Amazing content is being provided for your entertainment up until July 5th. Again, that web address is ebbandflowbr.org, ebbandflow.org. Speaking of seeing faces and recycling segues, I haven't had the pleasure of getting too many filmmakers on the show, which sucks because Louisiana has been growing its film industry for quite a few years now. I met today's guest through her loving spouse, and I've been a fan of her work and her presence ever since. Jency Griffin Hogan is an actress and producer based here in Baton Rouge. Her short film about Sojourner Truth entitled Seed of the Free made me cry like a baby. Jency, welcome to AC23.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, and thanks. I feel honored. I love the Arts Council. I love living in Baton Rouge and getting to make art here. And I'm so happy that we're doing this. So it's so cool.
Yes, long overdue, but we'll make it count. So first of all, thank you so much for Seed of the Free and With My Soul. You've been creating these period pieces that are telling some vital stories about persecuted peoples like women and Black folk that are aspects of the American history our textbooks omitted. What has prompted you to do such a crazy thing like tell the truth in America?
Oh, wow. Well, you know, I grew up in Baton Rouge. I went to primarily like Caucasian school. I grew up seeing the disparity, seeing a little bit of like, oh man, I really wish things were different. And it kind of broke my heart even as a kid. And I just wanted everything to look a little different. And so as I grew up, I just, you know, I went to college, got a degree in theater, and I realized that like as a creative, you can have a voice, you can tell stories, and a lot of times people are more open to hearing a message through a story in the, you know, in the media or in the film world. And I realized what do I want to be my legacy, or what do I want to leave behind? And I wanted to feel like I was contributing to telling stories of really just heroes in history that were unsung. And that's kind of how I came about with Sojourner Truth piece. I was studying actually for a TV show that I'd love to make here in Louisiana in the future, but it's about 4 women during war that come together to try to save children off the battlefield. And I was studying and doing a lot of research, and a lot of times, you know, when you're making a film, the research is the fun part, because you're kind of discovering things as you go along, like, oh, look at this character, like this is a real person, this happened to them, da 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 da. And you're like, oh, and I could do this, and I could do this, and so you start to accumulate like all of these cool things. Well, I was sitting at the Goodwood Library in Baton Rouge. I remember the moment, and I remember just kind of fumbling through all the books, and all of a sudden this book fell in my lap about Sojourner Truth. And I was like, wait, I know this name. I love her name, first off.
Yes.
She was given that name. That's not her true name, but it's because of who she is. So it fell into my lap, and it was like, oh my gosh. this is a cool story. So I started reading into the book and getting into it. And I thought, wow, I want to make a feature about her, like what? But, I've started as a short film maker only because that's just what I have the resources and the control to do. My husband and I both believe that, like, okay, start small and then build from there. And so I thought, well, if I did a short, then I could pitch it potentially to someone and it could eventually be a feature about her. And so if you don't know her story, she was an abolitionist, and she, escaped slavery and was just this huge voice, and she would sing over people. I mean, she had this voice that supposedly would like command the room, and she was a speaker. She was an orator. And she's so kind of like you. You know what I'm talking about?
I'm just like Sojourner Truth.
An orator.
Tell others.
She would literally, there's stories of her going up to the podium and literally singing out her story, like singing over the people, and then declaring the things she wanted to be heard,
Artists.
It just gives me chills, thinking about how powerful she was at her time.
Oh, yes.
So ahead of her time. And so as I'm flipping through the book, I'm like, what part of this story can I tell, and in the budget that I can do it, and how can I do it well? And so I invited my friend Kay Landon to get involved, and she's like, I think if we told this part right here, and I was like, yes, this is the story where she wins in the court case. And so the film is it's very simple, but it's about her winning her son, which is a very powerful moment in her life. And I think it had a lot to do with the future of what she was going on to be. But it was just really empowering how she won her son back. And she, it's like it applies to all mothers, but just imagine not having your son and then wanting to get him back and then getting him back. I mean, that's such a beautiful story. And so that's the story we told. And it's just 8 minutes long. And we actually made it for the Louisiana Film Prize, which is in the northern Louisiana. And it's interesting because you have to travel up to that area and shoot it. And so, yeah, it was really great. We had to find a courtroom from that time era. It was really difficult. We ended up finding a church and transforming it. It was, making period drama is not easy. And that's why I haven't made a feature of a period drama yet.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, as I was hearing you speak, one thing that jumped out at me is quite often, and there have been many movements that have been initiated by women, and still today, and we don't hear those stories enough of these, very powerful moments in which our country was pushed forward, and we don't hear enough of those stories that actually happened, right? Where women were at the front of the movement. So yeah, beautiful films that you created. I'm interested, what kind of pushback have you received, or did you receive when you endeavored to kind of put these stories out to the public sphere?
It's interesting. You want to get it right. You're going to do history, and you're going to, who wrote the book that these facts are from. So if you're going to, I've made 2 films that were based out of my own head, so I didn't have to do that as much. But if you're gonna do history, you better nail it. And
Yeah.
I never want to feel like there's like a sense of like that my filmmaking is more important than the real story. So I'm always wondering. That's kind of how I feel about that. Like I didn't really get any major pushback. People were just like, how are we gonna get all the people we need? Who can play this person? Like that's that strong, that is that amazing. And that was one of the issues. I really wanted to find someone who could sing, who could carry that kind of power. And Barnes is amazing as an actress and undiscovered, really still undiscovered, and I'm looking to help her develop her career also, and supporting her. And I want her to be discovered because she's great.
Yeah, she killed it. Yeah.
She killed it. And so I think if anything, people are just like, wow, that's daunting. So yeah. How do you
So let's go back.
shoes, you know? I mean, wow.
Let's go back to the beginning. What inspired you to want to do this for a living, or what was it a moment? Was it a movie? Was it a mentor?
Have you ever seen the movie Glory?
Oh yeah.
Okay, well, I saw that movie when I was 9. It was my first rated R movie, and my parents let me watch it, and I think it changed my life. I might have been more like 11, actually. I might have been 11 because it's rated R. I don't think they would have let me see it at 9. I just remember it came out around that time, and that really changed my life. Denzel Washington, the whole story, me seeing the disparity, me understanding race, maybe for the first, like the racial tensions of the world through that movie, and then watching the battle and thinking like, how did this happen? Who are, like, why do all these people have to die? And like, there's all this blood, and like, so you're young, you know, and you're wondering like, what is this? And so I think then on, I started studying history, you know. I wanted to figure it out, like what happened, like what was going on. And so I ended up taking, in college, I took, for my electives, I took like American history, and I took, you know, Civil War history, and I took, you know, all these things, and I'm realizing, okay, this is what was happening. And I learned stories like of real people that were going through these times.
Yeah.
And I think when you can make history real is the only time people really care about it. I don't know that you can, nobody really wants to live through all that pain unless you're talking about something that's important for them to learn in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part I've been really trying to figure out, you know, like, why tell such painful stories? Why go back unless you're going to inspire people for today, you know? So that's kind of, we can learn from our mistakes. And I think I learned that at watching Glory, you know. I fell in love with the movie.
Well, that's, you know, there's the famous Denzel Washington single tear scene.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, yeah, that story tells about like this huge sacrifice that this one regiment made, right? Which was, it turned out to be an important victory in the Civil War. And, you know, you say Glory, and I immediately think about, oh, well, you know, one of her pieces is set during the Civil War, you know? And so it makes sense. My first grown-up person movie that I fell in love with was Amadeus.
Oh my gosh.
And I think that was one of those moments where I was like, I'm supposed to be a musician. I'm supposed to make art. Like,
what a masterpiece. You know, and high level of masterpiece. Yeah. Oh
man, I identified with Mozart on such a personal level. Like, he just wasn't, he wasn't happy unless he was creating something, and or getting drunk. But I'm not a drinker, so but no, I just identify with his character, and just, you know, Tom Hulce just killed that role. I mean, and yeah, all the actors. So anyway, I get it. Like, sometimes, yeah, a movie can really kind of make you see the world differently. I think it's the power of film.
Yes. Took me from naivety to reality of our history pretty quick after seeing it. You know what I mean? Because you're 11, you haven't heard too much about it yet in school.
Right.
It's kind of new to you at that age. So.
And you probably never heard that story in school.
Probably not, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I was living in California. My parents moved me to California when I was 9, so I was learning about California history.
Yeah.
Wasn't really learning about the Civil War so much, you know. I was learning about something different. So yeah, I think it was news, and that's what movies can do. Hey, there you go. That is it. That is what a movie can do that really school can't do. I mean, we go and we pay money and we sit with popcorn and we educate ourselves on certain things. And so the voice is very important. Whatever voice you're going to have, it needs to be important, you know. And really, what I tell younger filmmakers, and like I'm saying I'm young too, because I've just made my first feature. But what I always am saying, to get those short films finished or produced to the very end, where you get the last lick of music, you get the last thing put up there, you get it submitted to the festival, all that stuff, unless you're super, super passionate about the story and it moves you to a point of just like propelling you forward, there is no reason to make it.
Yeah.
So unless you have the story so clear as to the why, everybody talks about their why, unless you have that so clear, you will not finish your project and it won't be great. That passion that you have to have in the very beginning of when you sit down to tell a story has to be really high, and unless you're just like a dollar sign person, all you see is money and that's what your goal is. I mean, as a creative, I'm hoping that I have a different view than just like dollar signs, but I think the movies that are great come from that kind of stirring passion. And I just, even if I may miss the mark sometimes creatively on how I pick this or that or do this or that, if I'm telling a story that needs to be told, then I'm doing my job,
Well, I think even, you're making me think about, the way I was taught history. It was a lot of dates and places. It was just a lot of raw facts and not a lot of narrative. Even though history is the narrative of humankind, but in one sense, it's one big narrative, but we don't get the humanity in it. Quite often, it's not in the textbook. We don't get how hard some of the choices were that people had to make, and or what some people, the minutia of what some people had to endure. And I think, you have people like Ken Burns, of course, who's tried really hard to try to bring history to life via, the Civil War or jazz or things like that. And, but I think, yeah, we need those narratives. And of course, yeah, like you said, they're hard to make, right? Because it's hard to find those buildings and in the wardrobe, and people have to try to get the accents right, the way people talked back then.
Oh my gosh, I have a funny story. I made my first film called Madeline's Oil. It's all on the Hogan Productions channel if you want to watch it on YouTube. You just look up Hogan Productions. But basically, I made my first film, and you can go find this mistake I made. But basically, I made this film, Madeline's Oil, and so there's a dish towel that the woman is holding when she's seeing her family walk up for the first time, and it's this epic like moment of like, oh, there's my family or whatever. And so she's holding this dish towel, and at the end, lights up, Q&A for the director, come to the front or whatever. So, or the team or whatever. So I go up to the front, and this man stands up and he's like, I have a question. I'm pretty sure that dish towel was from Walmart. I have one at my house. And I just was like, oh no. Like, people like in period drama, they're very, very critical. If you miss one thing, it like takes them out, So it's just a higher level. I mean, I learned from that experience that, okay, it's always cheesecloth, and it's always, it has to be, it has to be, can't look white, and, all these things, it can't look like bright, shining white, that it doesn't look real. So there's such a trick to period drama that, by Sojourner Truth piece, I had done 3, I think, already. And I was really, really like, okay, this has to look worn. This has to look like, you have to beat it up. You got to do it, So I was getting a little bit better. But it takes a really strong creative mind to think of that when you've got all the other things going on too,
Oh yeah, the devil is in the details.
To sell those moments,
Yeah, we have to suspend our disbelief. And of course, like the first thing I thought was like, who is this guy who's worried about a dishcloth being from Walmart? Like, really, dude, did that ruin the whole movie for you? But you have to think about those people.
Yeah, it takes them right out. I mean, it takes me out now because I'm watching for that stuff. But like when I watch a period drama that the shirt's too white, or it's not like, they didn't have like pristine cotton, and it wasn't like, it wasn't this. It can't look like it's from a modern day store, otherwise it just takes me out. So yeah.
That matters. So before we start talking about your feature film, for all those young women out there and young men out there who are listening, how does one become a filmmaker in Baton Rouge?
I think how does one become a filmmaker in Baton Rouge, Louisiana? I think you gotta find some local people who are doing it and jump on board with their projects. And like, I teach acting, and sometimes I'll teach a filmmaking class. I think LSU has a cool program, and UNO has a cool program. So like, if I find a young creative who I'm thinking of a specific girl that I know, and I see a propensity towards directing or producing, which is unique. Like, storytellers are unique, so you spot them, right? So if I find someone like that, I'm always like, okay, let's talk about your options as far as schooling goes. And I think education would be where I'd start. I have a degree in theater from Louisiana Tech, and even though it didn't have a film program, it did teach me how to start something and finish it and have a show at the end. So the theater, it teaches you that full circle. Every element you have to think of to put on a production is similar in film. You have to think of all the elements, and you have to finish it, right? And there's a deadline, and you have to get it done. So that structure doesn't change. And so I would say start with an education, and I really do believe firmly in education, whether it's Novak or online courses you can take now, because a lot of things are limited. But study, and watch great films. And in Baton Rouge, I would say seek out other people that are doing it, because the community is kind of small, you know. And even take an acting class, see what that's like. I think there's all different types of ways to find out more about what goes into making a film, and there needs to be more resources for people specifically in Baton Rouge. I don't know that there's a ton for younger creators,
Yeah.
But I know at the collegiate level, you can go to LSU, UNO, take film courses, take film history, learn about the greats, and then jump on and volunteer as much as you can on any indie project, and then grow into bigger projects. Honestly, Louisiana has provided me with experience in film. Big productions do come here, believe it or not. Baton Rouge, and to this area. For example, or you have to kind of stay in the know and stay connected with the community of filmmakers that are doing it. I had a friend reach out to me, said, my daughter thinks she wants to be a producer. What should she do? I was like, oh, we're going to have coffee, because she's from this area, like, we're going to have coffee and just sit down and talk about what her options are. Because young female producers, I'm like, all right, you're in high school, you want to be a producer? That's awesome. Let's talk about what that means, That's cool.
And it's something you can totally do. Like, people, might ask me, like, how do I become a poet? I was like, first write poems, just start writing, read all the poets that you think are important, who move you, study the craft. My first book that I went to buy on writing was a book on script writing.
Oh, really? What was the name?
Yes.
Do you remember?
It was called Writing the Script. I can't remember.
Okay.
It was a little black and white paperback that I got from the bookstore, and I studied that thing. And all of the poetry books that I've read since then, none of them talk about like something like tension and release, right? But it was totally like, when people read my work, especially my early work, it was very much rooted in this book that I was reading. And so it was about visuals. It was about me trying to tell a story visually through language. So there was lots of imagery in my writing from early on, when I got serious about writing poetry.
Yeah.
And so I think, it's just the way that I love the way that filmmakers tell stories. I can get into, of course, as someone who studies language, I can totally get into the dialogue of a film. I'll geek out on David Mamet all day. But at the same time, just the way that a filmmaker chooses just specific shots to tell a narrative has always fascinated me. So let's talk about your feature. Tell us about the feature film you just completed.
Well, I decided to get personal. They say only write what you know. And I've been telling a lot of stories that were kind of outside of what I have lived through myself personally for a long time. And so I thought, I was also turning 40. And I was like, what kind of present could I give to myself at this day and age? Like, what would make my fire burn? And I knew I was going to have to do it, in that really hardworking way,
Yeah.
because limited budget, calling everyone to the fire, saying like, come hither and help me, do this, even though I don't have a ton of money. And I also knew I was going to have to pitch it to some family friends. That's actually how you get a film made in the beginning. It's not like people are just going to give you money from Sony or, HBO or, Netflix. You kind of have to rally people around your fire. And like, what story is the most relevant to myself? Because they say, write what you know. And I was going through this feeling of letting go of the idea of having my own children. And I knew a lot of women that are kind of around my age that were struggling with, they hadn't met their perfect man yet, or they hadn't, maybe they had a divorce before they were able to have kids, or maybe they weren't capable of having kids. And so there's this age range that happens with women. All women know what I'm talking about, where you start to think, oh man, I don't know if I'll get to do that, And I had made a choice, that I wasn't going to. And so as 40 approached, I still was questioning a lot of that. And so that film came out of that pain and questioning, and so I wrote down it in bullet points. I'm not a writer personally. I really admire anybody who can. I'm like super dyslexic. Words freak me out. I can't write a sentence at all. I'm really, really bad at writing. I've always struggled in that area, had many tutors and things to try to help me. But anyway, I do bullet points just to kind of lay out how I do a film and how I think of a film. But I did bullet points of the story of what was coming from my heart, just like this happened,
Yeah.
this, and then I turn it over to a writer. And I think a lot of young filmmakers might feel discouraged because they're like, well, I can't really write. I don't really know how, or, I'm not really good at that part of it. And I think that's okay, as long as you know what your strengths are. If you've got a vision and you can see something in your head and you're more visual or something like that, that's totally awesome. So I write bullet points. I turn it over to a writer. He's like, oh, I think I want to write this. Cool. I call him my film brother. His name's Alexander Jeffrey. He writes it. And then I set off on the path of raising the money.
The hard part.
I brought on a really cool co-producer named Emily Morris-Chenevere, who's worked on bigger budget films. So she helped me kind of get a vision of how much it would actually cost. And we did a big budget. And we started chipping away at the block of how we raise money for this. And we went to AFI, which is the American Film Market, and we pitched it to a bunch of distribution companies. And the distribution companies actually thought it was interesting. They said, come back when you're finished. We'd love to work with you. So I had a lot of encouragement from this true story I was telling. I was like, oh, people like this. People think this is fascinating. And it actually applies to them. The question, is it important to have kids to have fulfillment in your life altogether? Are you going to feel like you missed out on a high level? And people they know that question and they relate to it. Maybe some people it's like, oh, I wanted to have 3, but my husband only wants to have 1. Or, so it's really this cool question that's going on in the world right now. And that's kind of what the movie is kind of spinning off of. And it's a comedy. It's not heavy. It's not a heavy movie. Most of my films are like, woo,
Yes, I know.
They tend to be a little more on the heavy side. This one is an indie comedy, and it's quirky and weird and, and just hopefully relevant.
Definitely relevant. My oldest is 28, but when she was 23 was when I had my second, who's now 4. So, I kind of, dove back into this thing of raising small kids again. But it was really because, I'd remarried and my wife really wanted kids. I was kind of like, well, I've already kind of been a dad and raised a kid. And so, knowing how hard it can be to change diapers day and night, I was trying to really make sure she understood what she was asking me and what she was getting herself into. But she, when you've experienced parenthood and someone else says, well, I want to experience that too, and you love that person, well, you say, well, I can't stand in the way of that. I want that for you too, if that's what you want. And so and of course, you know, now I'm fully in. We went back for a second time, and now I have a 2-year-old, I have a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. Yeah. So, and
Cool.
yeah, it's like I couldn't imagine life without them. It's weird, you know.
Yeah, it's like
It's like
perfect.
why was I hesitant about doing this? And then, you know, of course, there's those moments where they wake up in the middle of the night. I just got back from a gig and I just fell asleep, and I was like, oh yeah, this was why I was hesitant to do this.
It's hard
But
work.
no, I can relate. Even as a man, I can relate.
Yeah, and we really thought we were making a movie for women between 30 and 45 or something. And as we told the story and pitched it at the American Film Market, we had a lot of men that really, they were like, oh, that's interesting. That's actually what's happening with me and my wife right now, or my girlfriend, or the girl that I want to marry, or or that's actually why my girlfriend and I broke up, or, you know, so you hear that a lot. And so I think it is relevant, and I think it is. And Daisy, it's called The Age of Daisy is the name of the movie. And so it's like, it's coming along. We have an hour of it. We're almost done with the edit. And we are getting close to doing a few pickup shots, and we're in the process of post-production, you know. And then we put it out into the market, which is really fun and exciting.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful.
My first time to go through all of this, you know, because short films, you don't really have a place of, you can't really sell them or anything. They're more of just kind of practice, I guess, for the big dogs when you get there.
Well,
So.
nothing wrong with that. Maybe, you know, if there's the Age of Daisy Part 2, where the kid is 50 years old, maybe there's a part for me.
Yeah, I got you. I'm casting you. Next movie, I'm casting you. It's something.
All right, man. I'm gonna dust off my acting chops and start getting back out there. It's been a long time, but I really missed a little of the acting that I did was, you know, Shakespeare, and it was so liberating being able to get on stage without having to depend on my own feeble writing skills as a writer. And by the way, nobody thinks they're a good writer. And
Really?
but of course, but then to be reading Shakespeare at that, you know, was like, oh man, this is a breeze. I just get to read somebody else's brilliant writing, you know, and act it out instead of getting up on stage acting out my silly poems. And so I remember getting such a rush out of acting, but of course, once I just fully immersed myself into competing internationally with spoken word, it was not something that I could realistically focus on. But as you and I were talking most recently, because of COVID-19 right now, for the first time in a long time, Hollywood is hungry for content.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit what you mean by that.
Well, you know, we've had to pause production. Louisiana had, I think, 11 projects in the, like, they were shooting when this all broke out. And I'm actually on a TV show right now called Claws. I don't know if you know, but there's this TV show that's shot in New Orleans, and it's funny. It's like kind of quirky, and I play a drug addict, but Verla is her name. And so Claws had to, you know, shut down production, for example, or, you know, they were like, maybe, I don't know, they were pretty close to wrapping up for the season, and they had to take a break. And so that happened across the board to a lot of productions. And so it's kind of like, and then people are starting to wonder, when will we reinstate production? And so there's, you know, it hasn't been really a seller's market in Hollywood in maybe about a decade or something. And so we're looking to sell our film during that time. And I feel like I've heard about production picking back up, but it just depends on how the fall goes, and like with the, you know, the new cases and stuff rising, I don't know what's going to happen. But I have heard that there are some auditions coming up for a few shows and things. So that's, you know, it's good. I feel like getting back to normal after COVID-19 is going to be a unique time. You know, it might be a little different. Production might run a different way. Everybody will wear masks until the scene is actually ready to go, you know, stuff like that. Because like, as an actor, literally people are like dressing you and putting makeup on. And they're like, can you kiss this guy? And can you do this? And can you, you have all these requests. So, and people are all around, like right in your face, like, oh, you need more mascara. Or you need, let me brush that hair. It's kind of looking funky. They're right up in your face. So we were wondering about that as actors, like how's that going to go down?
Well, we're gonna have to make movies that are that happen in this period, right? And so you're gonna have to have characters standing 6 feet away, or elbow bumping each other when they see each other, right? With masks on. They did it with Bane and Batman. So if you're good enough of an actor, you can project your emotion through your mask, I think.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be unique. We'll see how it all goes. I don't know. Looking into the fall, I don't know how they'll open it back up, but I think we can audition via Zoom, or there's something we call V-Audition. What I've heard about is that casting director is going to meet with you and give you notes via Zoom-ish type call, and then they'll cast from that. They don't necessarily they could do casting before they even shoot, so then they're just waiting for their actual shoot date,
Wow.
Fascinating how people will get creative when they need to,
You have to, and that's what artists do, right? We are, every great renaissance can be traced back to some natural catastrophe that forced people to think more creatively, and then boom, you have this explosion of creativity. And so it's the resilience of human beings, and I think this is why the world needs artists, because it's kind of a huge part of our skill set to figure out new ways of doing things, new ways of presenting ideas, and new ways of getting things done. And so if anything is going to survive this, it's going to be the art.
The art. Have you written any poems that are kind of related to this time? I mean, I know we have a lot of things going on in the world, not just COVID.
Yeah.
I was wondering what's coming out of Xero. I'm flipping it on you. What's coming out of you right now during this time of Black Lives Matter and this movement we're going through, this kind of depressing yet refreshing movement, because it's kind of like it needed to happen. It's got to happen. And I'm wondering, how's it affecting you as a creative?
Well, I'm so old that I see everything in a continuum of human evolution, and we have these again these great moments of tension and moments of release throughout history, and none of this is new. None of it is new, right? It's just what's changed is the technology and our awareness of certain things that have been happening. Things that I grew up in the Black community hearing about and being warned about, but also there were a lot of people in the Black community being very skeptical about what was going on. I can remember my dad saying, well, that boy must have done something to make those police do that, blah, 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 and we were getting our information from the newspaper and from the news. None of us were writing the news, but we were hearing certain things in the neighborhood, but then we were seeing certain things on the news and trying to come to terms with all of that. And, at the same time, there were people in my community who were convinced that something horrific was happening, but, quite often they would be met with our own kind of conditioning and self-oppression and things like that. And so it was really hard, but, you go back to that fateful Rodney King video where we finally started to see things like this being captured on film, and everybody's like, okay, now we can bring it to an end because everybody's going to see what's happening. And
right there,
wow, what Rodney King must be thinking right now. He's like, apparently, it takes a whole lot more than one video, And so that's the kind of stuff I've been writing about. But I am trying to figure out, do I want to be on stage? Do I want to be in front of a camera? Do I want to be just this guy who's putting out another book? And do I want to try to do all that stuff while I'm changing diapers?
Yeah.
So,
Really, like where is my place in the story of what's happening? Yeah.
it's yeah, and quite often, like for all of us, your place is in a lot of places, and hosting a podcast, right, where I get to talk to brilliant people like you, and so and wanting to collaborate more and work with other people more. I'm doing ads with I just did one with Tommy Talley that won the National Addy Award, and so writing commercials and doing voiceover work. Yeah, it's a lot, but I'm so grateful to be working and employed at this moment in time, and I'm trying to do everything I can to stay employed at this moment in time.
I'm feeling that.
Yeah,
all creatives, like, to be a creative and be employed is it's huge right now, it's a big deal.
yeah. No, it's always been huge for me. Every time I've gotten a late rent notice or a car evicted, it's just been like, man, it's artist life. You sacrifice everything for it so that like 5 people in town can know your name, and but you also sacrifice everything for it so that your legacy can be of someone who maybe was lucky enough to create something that maybe somebody considered really good, and
touch somebody. Like the fact that you said you cried after you watched Seed of the Free, I'm like, well, thank God it hit somebody. You know what I'm saying? At least I can know that, because I'm driving a 13-year-old car and I have, I spent all my money on that instead of, some of the daily things you might contribute, to your life, that it worked, that the story is worth it, and it was worth the energy and the time and everything. So.
Yes, it is why we do what we do to, and I think also, like, you watched Glory and something in you said you're meant to be a filmmaker, right? And,
Crazy.
I remember seeing Saul Williams perform for the first time and saying, oh, I got to do that. Not I like that, I love that, but also like, I did love it, but also like I have to do what he's doing. And I have to do it right now. I have to figure out a way to do that, and so, yeah, it's kind of like, it's this, you can call it a curse or a blessing, I don't know, but it's, I got to do this,
as a kid asking, my aunts, who was like, I have a really smart aunt, I have a few aunts and people in my life, and we're like, wait, why don't you write a book? Like, don't you have a story you need to tell? Like, something like that. Like, why wouldn't you ever write a book? She's like, I don't really have anything to say. And I was thinking, God, I have so much to say. Like, I want to be able to tell stories, and I didn't know it was going to be a filmmaker. I think I was probably 13 or something when I said that to her, but I didn't know it was through filmmaking that I would get to do that at the time. I didn't put it all together yet. I actually didn't know I wanted to be an actress till I was, 18 or something. I wasn't a young creative. It took me a little while to find my niche or where I would fit,
Well, when you said you were a horrible writer, as far as writing, manuscript down on paper, and I was like, yeah, but you're writing through film, you're writing through a camera, like, you're a great writer, it's just
a different kind of writing. It's bullet points, it's like visual points that I see in my head. Like Madeline's Oil came out of me having a little daydream about a woman riding across a field to save her daughter's life on a horse, and there's like a interracial marriage and all this stuff, so I just saw it all and then bullet pointed and then handed over, putting, the dialogue to me in filmmaking is the hardest thing. Like,
but are you also directing? Who's
on the feature? No, Alexander Jeffrey is the director.
So for your film shorts, have you directed? Have you been the one plotting out the shots?
Well, I have, I do co-direct because I didn't go to school for it or anything. I went to school for acting. So usually I co-direct because I'm kind of like, yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Like that's what I saw in my head. I just want to, like, I'll invite someone to co-direct with me because I feel like I can't fully turn it over because it's my baby, because I saw it first. And then I also need to learn from other directors that have been, plowing the field a little longer, doing it longer than I have.
Yeah.
And so I've learned through the experience. I did not direct, obviously, this feature that I did, but I have dreams of being hired as a director, and I've been hired a couple times. This is a film called Last Light that I directed, and it also makes people cry. I think it does. Anyway, so it's I'm kind of still finding my place. I think we all are in the creative field. Like we're still kind of,
Always.
you
There are
know,
no masters. We're
well,
all apprentices. We're
yeah,
all apprentices. There are no masters.
totally.
And you gotta be like that if you want to keep growing. And if you want to keep making it interesting for yourself, you're not gonna stay at the party once the party gets boring, you know. And so to keep being a poet or keep being a writer, I have to kind of go to some scary places sometimes as a writer to kind of, okay, well, you know, what am I afraid to do? And I think, you know, for quite a few years since I stepped away from theater and acting, like, you know, acting scares the hell out of me, you know. And I know I can bring my words to life, but I have to bring somebody else's words to life. And so, and you know, people are going to judge me as a performer, but in a very different way. And so, it scares me, and maybe that's why I've been, you know, talking to you about it, about getting back into it. You know,
it is
because
like gut wrenching. Like you just want to be truthful. You want to be real. You want to be in the moment with the other actor. You don't want to look like, you know,
the weak link.
the weak link.
Yeah.
You want to tell this, like, get the character that you're hired to play. You want to do it justice to what the director had or the writer had in their mind.
Yeah. Nobody wants to suck. I mean,
Right.
you know, it's like, who wants to suck? You know, I don't want to suck. And so, but everything I've ever done, I had to suck at it for a while before I got to a point where people would like genuinely compliment me. And so I'm like, man, I gotta get into this maybe again and maybe give this another try. And I have to be brave enough to let myself suck for a while and kind of, and be in that moment, you know, and take that criticism and take that constructive criticism and take that coaching or whatever I need and get back out there and keep, you know, pushing myself to a higher level of competency. And that is horrifying, and people chicken out all the time. You know,
They
I've
say
seen
that
people,
acting and filmmaking is like a longevity game. If you stay in it long enough and you continue to get better, you don't just like plateau, you will be successful because the dropout rate is so high because of
yeah,
and you have to be fiercely committed and be okay with tons of rejection and actually being okay with kind of sucking at the beginning, you know, because I would say my first films they're okay, you know, they're beautiful, but they, you know, I missed the mark on some areas, you know. So I mean, you get better and better as you go, and I think that's what you want to. That's why you want to make those short films, and that's why you want to have those smaller roles and those small movies, so that you're ready for when you get the bigger break, you know.
somebody hit me up a couple of weeks ago and he had taken a screenshot of like my first book. I was like, please burn it, please don't, please throw that away, please don't show people that exists. Don't let that get out that exists, you know.
Like a trial run. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, I interviewed Howard Hall, the comedian, some weeks ago, and he was talking about his first ever stand-up experience, and he was like, man, I know I sucked so bad. And he got up having never done stand-up before and got up and did like an hour of material off the top of his head and kept the audience engaged. And I'm like, dude, like, it might be embarrassing to you, but you know, I don't think that your cringeworthy moment is as cringeworthy as mine. But we all, you know, have those early kind of baby steps that we have to take.
Oh yeah. And there's always the riskier the commitment to a character, the more likely you could fall on your face. You know, the bigger risk you take. And so that's kind of, you know, as an actor, I've heard a lot of casting directors say like, oh, I just want you to make a strong choice and come in and do it. So when you come in, you make a strong choice and it doesn't work, like that is humbling, you know? So you're like, okay, well, I'm going to roll this back and we'll try it again, you know?
Well, I think for a lot of, I've always tried to talk to my students about the ability to just kind of put your ego on hold if you can. And practice that. Like it is about, you know, all of this boils down to ego. Like, can I, of course you can't not have an ego, but how can I reserve my ego enough to be able to suck at this and keep showing up until I get better, right?
Right. Every audition you get a little better every rejection pushes you to study harder or learn your lines more, or, you know, or do a little more character research so you feel confident when you go in the room or make a choice or something. Yeah, you know, I've always used rejection as fuel, because early in my career, I had a lot of people telling me that, like, basically you're not pretty enough, you kind of have coarse teeth and a big face. And that's tough. You know, you're very androgynous. No one's going to want to look at you on the camera. I mean, these are the kind of things people would say. Your face is really big. You have big teeth. You know, you have to listen to this stuff. And your smile is too big. I get that a lot. It's kind of funny for anybody to tell you that. Your smile is just too big. Like, you're putting too much joy into the world. Your smile.
And I'm thinking, like, I got to find a director who's looking for a big smile. That's what I got to do.
But, you know, so you know, rejection is something that a lot of actors deal with. So when I see performances and people say, like, wow, I don't like her as an actress, like people who are not actors or not in the creative field, I'm like, yeah, but they got the job. They did the job and they gave it their best, and they deserve applause regardless of how poorly you think their performance is, because it's very hard to land what they landed, you know? And so people just so quickly throw out their opinion, and that, you know, everyone's a critic. But it's kind of like, I'm like, oh, wow, they did it, you know?
You know how hard it is.
I know how hard it is, yeah.
And you know how hard it is for women. You know how hard it is for women who are not 20 anymore, yeah. To be able to find real roles that have substance, that are not, you know, one-dimensional. And so I think, yeah, it's easy to critique something, you know. I mean,
you tried it, you know, like, once you kind of try to do it, you're like, oh, okay, I see why they make $1 million a movie, or I see why, you know, like, they get paid a lot, you know, or even on a regular actor gets paid like $1,000 a day, you know, on like a TV show. And you wonder, like, why do they get paid $1,000 a day? That's a lot of money. Well, it's a lot of work to land that job, and payoff is actually relatively small based on, you know, how much work we've done to get to that spot, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like you sacrifice, you know, if you're going on auditions all the time, like, you're not at your day job.
Right.
You know, and yeah, the level of sacrifice. I even think, you know, like, people used to book me back when I was really performing and doing big shows. People used to book me to come out to colleges. They'd fly me out to universities to perform. And then folks would ask me, like, so how much do you get paid for a show? And I said, oh, you know, sometimes I can get paid $1,000, sometimes as much as $4,000. And then people would say, so they're going to pay you $4,000 to get on stage and recite poems for 30 minutes. I said, well, they're paying me for the hours it took to write the poems, revise the poems, the hours it took to memorize the poems, to block the staging of the poems. And so they still owe me money if I'm gonna apply an hourly rate. Yeah, they still owe me money if I'm gonna apply an hourly rate to it. But
sure.
and people are also paying you for all the other thousands of times you've gotten on stages and worked at becoming a better performer.
Yes.
And so, yeah, you never get paid for all that. So much of what we do is investment in someday hopefully getting paid to present our work.
Yeah, and I think that's why the longevity is the key. You know, like,
yes,
keep chipping away at it. You keep kind of creating your own possibilities. And I would encourage most creatives, and especially people in Louisiana, you know, not to sit back and let their agent do their job, but basically that's what I've constantly been trying to do is, you know, create possibilities, you know, for myself. Like, I saw myself, I saw a movie called Frances Ha. Have you ever seen that movie?
I don't think so.
Greta Gerwig. It's really cool. If anybody listening has ever seen it, it's one of my favorite films. So quirky and fun. Anyway, I saw that movie, and for the first time I thought to myself, like, oh, I could be a lead actress. I was really encouraged by her naturalness and how quirky she was. And I was like, oh, I could be a lead actress. Like, maybe I could do it. And that kind of got me thinking about the feature film. And I think you have to kind of really believe in yourself and see yourself that way. And then other people will buy into it. You know,
yeah.
Sometimes you got to know before other people buy in, you know? And,
well, you know, we live in a world where not many people know who they are.
Yeah. It's true.
And I think artists it's been my experience, and of course, so conceited to say because I'm an artist, but artists, I think, when I do meet people who know who they are, 9 times out of 10, it's a fellow artist. We have to know who we are in order to know that the voice we're sharing is an authentic voice. And yeah, I think everyone should study art, if only for that reason.
Oh yeah, I mean,
even if you're gonna be a a carpenter or a cook, whatever, like you got to study art.
Oh yeah, and I think that's where it all starts with education, right?
Yes,
and
yes,
I think
yes.
the Arts Council is huge on that, which is so cool. I think it's just we got to educate young that how to incorporate the arts into your life, even if you aren't a creative. By going to the symphony once a month, or by going to the museums, or looking at the art at the Baton Rouge Art Gallery. I grew up, knowing about those things, visiting those things. So I think, as small as our community is, we have so much creativity to tap.
Oh yeah.
And I think it is a creative culture in Baton Rouge. And I think that we got to get out and support those people and go to those art shows and do the things so it continues to grow.
Throughout the state, there's just so much, great art, call it folk art, fine art, whatever. Like there's so much creativity, which is one of the things about this state that I just absolutely love, is the level of creativity that I see throughout this state is, I don't know that it's paralleled anywhere that I've traveled to.
You think about just the music itself.
The music, the culinary arts, I mean, come on.
It's amazing. Just those two things. That's the reason to visit New Orleans.
Stop right here. You can stop right there, right?
I know.
And now we got, great filmmakers like you, and yeah, I mean, great photographers like Aaron.
Well, we're staying around. We just built a building. We're going to be here. We want to be a creative hub for Louisiana, where you can take acting classes, photography classes. We want to enhance this community. I got a visual on what the building should feel like, and this kind of reminds me of what the Arts Council is like. But basically, like, you could imagine, like, paint. If you took paint and you poured it out of the windows and it went down to the street and it went out, like from where the creativity was happening, it's just like bringing life and color into your community. Just
spilling
like
out,
pouring out.
overflowing.
And I think the Arts Council does a great job of that. And I think even their promotion materials and everything, like the colorfulness and just the way they do it, the way they promote the arts. I think we need more people committed to it. But I think that it's just, Baton Rouge can grow and can be great, and especially in the arts. I think it's happening. And so many creatives I know have moved home, or they've come back and they decided to commit to Baton Rouge. And Aaron and I definitely have now, especially with the building, which will be an awesome space.
And congrats on the building. Thank you so much for being on the show today. We are gonna sit on the edge of our seats and wait until you let us know when we are gonna get a chance to see this feature film. But until then, they can go to your website and see some of the short films you made.
Yes. I have a website called, it's Jency G Hogan at it's just Jency G Hogan. Sorry. I have a website that is Jency G Hogan, and also this Hogan Productions on YouTube. You can go and check out Seed of the Free and get your clean.
Well, Jency, thank you so much for talking with me today. Hug Aaron for me, kiss Aaron for me. The kiss is from you, the hug is from me. Even though I know he wouldn't turn down a kiss from me.
That's true.
Not to say that he should or shouldn't. But I've known Aaron. I think me and Aaron met in like 2002, 2003. I was working for Big Buddy back then, and even then he was like this photographer that everybody was talking about and everybody wanted to book. And it's just been amazing seeing him grow, and you guys are just beautiful together. I love like going somewhere and I see y'all working together, and I was like, damn, man, that's just like, that's what marriage should look like. Somebody that you don't mind standing next to when you're at work.
Yes, we do a lot of that. A lot of those, we're always, I'm holding the light for him. And, I basically am his assistant when we're on these shoots. And then he's assisted me in my dream, the filmmaking. And it's been this really cool marriage, literally. So.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's what it's supposed to be.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much, Jency. And I wish you all the luck that you don't need in the world. And I'll be reaching out to you. I think I need some acting classes, and I'll be reaching out to y'all.
Okay, thanks, Xero. You rock.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Arts Council.
Yes, indeed. And all my listeners out there, this is Xero signing off from AC23. I'll see y'all at a show. Bye-bye.